You're listening to Symposium, a year-round conference in the arts, brought to you by Pipeline Artists. Welcome to One-on-One with producer Michael Peterson. Michael is the Vice President of Development for Phoenix Pictures, where he served as the production executive on The Last Voyage of the Demeter, based on Bram Stoker's Dracula novel in partnership with Steven Spielberg's Amblin, Universal, and DreamWorks. He was a producer on the Critics' Choice nominated miniseries The Long Road Home from the National Geographic and worked on the biopic The 33 with Antonio Banderas, The Promise with Christian Bale and Oscar Isaac, and the Monty Python comedy Absolutely Anything with Kate Beckinsale and Simon Pegg. Phoenix Pictures is known for producing critical and commercial hit films, including the Oscar-winning film Black Swan, Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island, What to Expect When You're Expecting, The Thin Red Line, among many others. And tonight, we're also joined by Executive Director and Partner at Pipeline Media Group, Matthew Misetich. For the past 20 years, he has overseen all divisions, including script, book, and film, as well as being the visionary for our newer divisions, Pipeline Artists and Symposium. He's based in Los Angeles and is a partner at the independent publisher Fringe Press. So I'm going to slide off the camera and leave this to you two gentlemen, but I am in the background if you need me.
Thank you, Jeannie. I'm glad you mentioned it for everyone to drop where they're from, because it's wild to me every session how many countries are represented in all these events. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, like Jeannie said, huge thanks to Michael for taking the time. It's not really often that newer screenwriters, I'm assuming the majority of the crowd are newer screenwriters. I define newer as anything under writing for 15 years at this point. But it's not often they get a chance to talk to an actual exec who's on the ground floor of things. And we are all extremely appreciative of your time. So I will say thank you now. I'll say thank you at the end, and I'm going to send you an email a week later saying thank you again. So, and there's 500 here today. I think the attendees are probably going to be a little less for the live one, but we did get the max signups. So, okay, so there's a lot to cover, and the hour is going to go by super fast, and it's going to feel like we're skipping around a lot and maybe answering some questions that feel a little basic, but that's just the nature of these Q&As, and I'm going to try and get through as many as possible and try to skip over any ones that feel a little too like, well, you can Google that. So I want to make the most use of Michael's time. So that said, I'm going to start before I hit the Q&A box. I'm sorry, I'm cheating, and I'm going to answer one of my own questions to start. Kind of a softball question too. This is kind of a mostly, I think, obvious answer for you and I, Michael, but there's so many writers that just have no idea unless they're talking to industry people. What are kind of the genres and the subgenres that people want to read at the moment, or is it kind of across the board? And also, second part of that question, has that changed in the last 5 years and 10 years? And we can kind of get into the why of that maybe later, but just want to hit upon the genre question first.
It's a great question. Let's just go back a little bit. Like, the movie business used to be, most movies were dramas and everything else were in subcategories. And, movies were made for this mid-budget range of $20 to $50 million. And it was a great script and a great package and a great cast. And, it would go and get made. And that middle range has really dropped out of this. And so the dramas are harder to do. They're like, oddly enough, they're like the thing that has built the movie business, but they're really difficult to get done today. And so there's like a reticence for people to tackle them. The onus on them gets gotten really high, and the other categories and other genres outside of dramas have kind of been elevated to things that are more theatrical or have more spectacle behind them. And so, like, horror is still a very communal experience, and so there's a lot of interest in finding horror out there in the marketplace. Comedy has suffered a difficult road the last 5 to 7 years. There's been a lot of political changes in the country. There's been a lot of cultural changes in the country. There's been a generational shift in talent. There's been difficulties theatrically in the business. And so there's just been kind of, while everybody loves comedy. I think it's just been a harder road for people to figure out. And so there's been less of a desire for it. Maybe moved more to TV than movies. But in the conversations that I'm having with the market, people are really looking for like, what is theatrical today? What can be a movie? In theaters, and comedy is still one of those great communal experiences. And so people are eager to figure it out. I don't know that it's like a clear, oh yeah, these are the 20 stars that make comedies today, but like, this is how you can do it. And so when you're thinking about what you're writing, I think that like comedy is coming back to us, romantic comedies and romance. People are trying to figure that out again. That's something that haven't been serviced in the last 10 years. And so there's a desire to figure that out with new, fresh, exciting talent. Like, you look at the romantic comedy that Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney did, and it did really, really well. And it sort of proved we can go take swings on these things. And then like, sci-fi and action adventure, a lot of that comes down to casting and packaging. But I think those are still things that like studios can look at and say, we can make, a big spectacle out of this. We can create an event out of this. And so those are things that people are looking for too. It just kind of depends on, what targets you're looking at today.
Right. So if I'm a writer and let's say I mostly write dramas, and drama is such a broad, I mean, there's so many different variations. It could be more of a speculative, I'm using the book term, but like futuristic drama or sci-fi drama, but it's still a drama. But if they are writing in that vein, what would you tell them to kind of do to sort of elevate it a bit in terms of the premise or in terms of like how to separate it from the basic like family drama type thing, for example?
Totally. Well, let's just take family for a moment. You just brought up like a family, right? The family movies have gotten complicated theatrically, right? A family movie today is Jumanji. It's Minecraft. That's the way people are looking at family movies today. The streamers can tackle a narrower definition of family, like more earnest, familial drama, if you will. And I think that there's a lot of room in the streaming business to do dramas. It still has, this is just from a producer's perspective, you still have the challenges in the market that you have to figure out with finding the right talent that can get that made and the right directors and things. I think they're trickier theatrically than they used to be. I think there's a few things you can do to keep to set yourself up better than not. One, the $100 million historical drama is very difficult to pull off. Almost
right.
And so like if you're writing
any kind of period piece for that matter, right? We can just throw it in there, unless it's a contained, very unique sort of thing where it's not these big set pieces.
People are allergic to them, and then they work, and then people go, oh well, that worked because of such and such reason. And that doesn't mean that people don't like them. People love period dramas. Look at there's Bridgerton is a great example of a way into a period costume drama that's a little different and a little fresh and kind of has a YA bend to it. I think if you're going to look at like a drama or a period, finding a way to cross-pollinate that genre in like a fresh way is really interesting. It's a great example. Bridgerton is a drama, maybe a melodrama if we want to go there, like romance. There's like a romance component to it. There's a drama component to it. There's something stylish and fresh about it. There's something young about it. So I think it appeals to a younger audience. The concern that everybody has with this is that dramas are harder to market to younger audiences they're paying attention to TikTok. And so it's harder to sort of thread the needle for them. But
it really is an attention span thing. Like with TV, with the second screen show and that sort of thing, it's bled over into theatrical in terms of how you want to market this and make it sound juicy and right. Yeah.
I mean, and look, this is a problem of the moment. The movie business is in an acute inflection point right now, and we can talk a little bit about that in a minute here too. I like to talk a little bit about like where everything is, because it really helps you figure out what the challenges are as a writer. In a way, I think that like you take the Leonard Bernstein picture that Bradley Cooper did. That took Bradley Cooper writing and directing, starring in the movie, Martin Scorsese and Spielberg co-directing to get that movie
Right.
made for Netflix.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And even like a Universal released movie or something that was big and in theaters everywhere. Right. So it just
Yeah.
goes to show, like, you know, like, and that was kind of like a down the middle biopic on Leonard Bernstein. And it was a stylish directorial take on it, but the story was
Mhm.
pretty in the middle. Right.
Right.
And so I think that, like, you know, writing it in a more contained way is really important. You know, when I look at, like, I have dramas that I'm producing, that I'm working on, that I believe in, that I'm excited by, the kinds of movies that
Mhm.
our company does, that I do. You know, we try to look at it and say, like, where does the marketplace live on these things? Well, this is going to be really cast dependent. It's going to be filmmaker dependent. If it's a $25 million movie, I don't know that there's a home for it. But if it's a $15 million
No.
movie, maybe we can figure it out. And so it takes some time to figure out those creative instincts about how much scale you're imbuing in this, or how long it, you know, but like, if, you know, if you can come up with that premise that hits that, it gives you more runway to figure it out from a producer's.
Yeah, let me grab one of the questions too on that note. As a higher level development exec producer, what types of projects are going to stick out to you the most? I guess specifically for Phoenix, because I know there's, you know, there's a range of genres that you're really most interested in. But what I guess what are the intangibles in a script that you're really going to cling to?
It's great. I think, like, first and foremost, like, we're always looking for great characters.
Mhm.
Like, characters should be leading the story rather than reacting to the story. There's a sense of agency
Yeah,
that we can. There's a sense of propulsion driven by these interesting characters that feel lived in, they feel authentic on the page, are something that always grab our attention. And look, you know, we have really big long read lists, you know, and so,
right.
you know, we do, you know, I heard somewhere on another podcast, they were talking to a writer, and he as a writer had been a former development executive, and even he was saying, as a writer, you know, when I'm reading something, if I'm 15, 30, 40 pages into a script and I don't know what this movie's about, I'm just going to put it
Right.
down.
Correct. Yeah. Which
Um,
that's how it is. It's fair. Right.
you know, yeah,
Or if you know what the movie's about and it's like, it's not for us, nothing can really save it from that point, at that point, right?
yeah. I mean, look, but if it's, I've read stuff that isn't for us that I just couldn't put down. It's just really good,
True,
right?
sure.
Like, I
Yeah, yeah.
just want it to happen. I blow through it. I read 90 pages, you know, 120 in an hour. And it's like, man, that was great. I can't produce this, but I need to go meet this person. They're
Right.
really good, you know. We're looking for voices, you know, and we're looking for really great characters on the page. And look, I think that, like, ideally in that first act, you've got to have a really clean, like, fun, like, simple idea.
Hmm.
We're always looking for fun right now. Like, and fun can have a broad meaning. I think that the world feels like it's spinning in a way, right? Like there's everybody's reacting to social media changes and technological changes and political changes and all kinds of things that are happening, and there's this kind of a sense of chaos that's out there,
Hmm.
and I feel like it's our job to be some kind of curation in what we're doing, and it feels like
Right.
contributing to that is not really creating the great escapism that audiences look for. I think that, like, movies have always served as a means of escapism, and I think if our true north right now in all of our conversations is this fun in a way, and it doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be like, it could be a horror film, but, like, what's the fun in the horror film? You know?
You know, I was saying the other day, there has to be joy in every movie or in every script, in every whatever it is, book, film, TV show, right? And I think that's what you're kind of getting at. Even like the darker stuff, there's a certain element of joy to it, or it makes you feel a certain element of joy, or excitement. And that's an interesting way to look at it. I don't think we hear about that often. That it can't just be bleak. It can't just be this like journalistic sort of report of like a story that happened, right? You have to have fun with it.
Well, it depends. I think it's really important to think about who your audience is. You
Yeah.
know, like, this group as screenwriters, it's their job to find or create great stories. And um, doing that whole cloth is like a monumental lift. Whether the movie gets made or not, it's like, you sitting in a room for a year or 3 months or 4 months or 6 weeks or however long it takes you to write, just like
Right.
knocking something out from your brain, right? We're always thinking about like, where is the audience on this journey, and what do they walk out of the story with? Right now, when I say we're looking for something fun, I want something that, like, for me personally, not this the whole business, but for me personally, I want something that either inspires people or brings them joy or entertains them to a place where they feel uplifted. I have horror films we're doing that still at the end of it, like, have kind of a sense of fun to them. And so, like, when you walk out of the theater, you're like, man, that was entertaining. Do you remember that moment and that moment and that moment? It's not just, and I think that, like, there's something fun. I think that, like, just knowing where you want the audience to end at the end of your story, what you want them to feel, is like really, really important.
Right. Like every Ari Aster movie, it's dark, but it's like, there's a sense of, I don't know if joy is the right word, but I'm going to use it again. There's a sense of joy to it. Like you're enthralled after you leave the theater. Right.
There's almost a mirth from the wildness or the inventiveness, that he'll do. He's a director too, so his filmmaking adds this other language to it.
Right.
But there's always something that's, like, compelling that people want to talk about afterwards.
And this knocks out a couple earlier questions people asked. It really does start like in the concept stage, right? If you don't come up with an idea that really excites you, it's going to show on the page, and vice versa, I've found.
Yeah, like, I think, like, everybody in the business right now is talking about clean ideas, like clean hooks, simple ideas.
Right? What does that mean? Clean idea?
Like a clean hook, like, this happens, and then this, and it feels novel or unique, or like it gives you a sense of why this is a movie just as a story.
Simple and unique, essentially, right?
Everybody's always in search for it, right? It's like, is your story, I'm just reaching from my hat, is your story about, like, somebody in recovery who, has to go on their 12 steps, and their sponsor goes and their sponsor falls off the bandwagon, and they have to nurse them through the steps, along the way. That's kind of a fun, clean idea, right? It's like, there's a clean hook there. It's like, okay, this guy's going on. If I just tell a comedy about somebody who's going through the journey of sobriety, that's a story. And I'll have to go read it to see what happens in the story. But if you tell me they're, going on this journey with their sponsor, and their sponsor falls off the bandwagon and goes on a massive bender, and they have to, like, carry them through it. Now I've got a hook. Now I know, like, the thing in the end of the first act that's going to take this story in a different direction, and I get the framework of it. Everybody's looking for that right now, because they think that the streaming wars created a lot of product, and they didn't market almost any of it.
Do you think it's too much? Do you think there is such a thing as too much content? I think the answer is obviously yes. Right.
Yeah, I think so too much. For sure, I think too much. And all the studios are they're tightening their belts right now as a result of it. They overspent. They have a lot of product that hasn't performed. And part of it's just like, how long do we all spend on Netflix or Disney or whatever, like, looking for something to watch, right? It's like 30 minutes, 40 minutes as we're scrolling through it.
The length of the movie that you could have watched to start with, right? Yeah.
That's right. And so I think that people are starting to get a little bit more focused again on what they want to do. And so I think finding that, like, it's a well-trodden trope that you hear, like the Hollywood elevator pitch. Like, can you simplify your idea into a pitch that you could give to somebody between floors if you ran into them in an elevator and recognized them? And that trope is utilitarian for, like, if you met somebody, can you pitch it for the opportunity for them to say, send that to me? But
Mm-hmm.
conceptually, that's a really important exercise too. Can you distill your idea into something simple and clean like that? And if you can, then it's probably a simple, clean enough idea to go like that, like it'll really work. If you can't, it might be too complicated, honestly,
Right.
to really tackle the real estate of thematic arcs and character development and payoff and the things that you need to make an emotionally satisfying story.
This will also will change gears a little bit. This will also knock out several similar questions. I mean, people ask me all the time, like, if I have a script, where do I go? Like, where do I send it to? It's not as linear a path in screenwriting and TV writing specifically than it is really in any other industry, plays, books, etc., where there's a structured road that manual you can follow a little bit. And I feel like it's funny. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I felt like it was more structured. There were more managers that were open to queries. There were more agents even that were open to queries. There were more production companies open to queries. I don't see that as often anymore. It's like you have to go through different other channels, whether it's a contest or a fellowship or it's a networking thing where you introduce, you get met, or you get introduced to a manager through a friend or whatever. I never really have. You would think I would know the answer to all these questions, but I really don't know. Like something like Phoenix, you can't query Phoenix, obviously. So, like, where do you source, not necessarily for new writers, but where do you source material? Is it coming from agencies? Is it coming from managers, producer friends? It's coming through referrals. Assuming it's a mix of everything, right?
It is. It is a mix of everything. Relationships ultimately are really important long term in the
Right.
entertainment business.
And touch
And
upon that for a second too. Like, as someone who's at a big production company, um, what are you looking for in those trusted relationships? Is it like how does that build over time, like with a manager or with a certain rep or what have you?
it's a great point. Look, I think that finding people whose taste is aligned with your taste is really important, because we only have so much time in the day to address things or to move things forward. And when we want to take something
Right.
on, the ideal is that we're taking something on that we have a plan for, whether we can get it there or not, or whether we can get it over the line. That's the challenge of producing. But
Yeah.
I think that like first finding somebody whose taste you're aligned with, those are people that like I probably share a number of things back and forth to find, you know, the understanding of that taste-based relationship. They'll share a few things that they like. I'll read a few things, say like yes, no, this doesn't work for us, et cetera, et cetera. We go back and forth. It's more fluid of a dynamic to build that relationship,
Hmm.
than sometimes I've had, so to go back, a lot of the material that comes to us will come from literary agents, they'll come from literary managers. Sometimes we'll see books that we're interested in or some kind of form of intellectual property, we'll go that route. Um, and sometimes it's like a filmmaker relationship or a producer colleagues that
Hmm.
bring us and say, hey, this is something that we're working on and we're excited by it. Are you guys interested? But the touch point of familiarity to cut through the noise in our inbox and is always helpful.
Yeah, it's a point I bring up too because we're telling all these writers that these are the types of genres that are hot right now. These are the ones that are maybe not as high in demand. But even within that sphere of requests or that sphere of criteria, everyone is going to have their own tastes. The erotic thriller that works for one person isn't going to work for the other person, right? And you just kind of have to know how to navigate that from a writer perspective. If they're trying to find, I would assume they are, or would recommend they are trying to find a manager if they want to be a working screenwriter. What's kind of your I know you're not a manager, but what's kind of your guidance on that front as far as how to find a good manager and any tips you can kind of sort of give on that sort of search? Because I'm assuming 99% of the writers in this session are looking for rep.
Yeah. Look, it's a good question. And there's no like simple, straightforward answer to it. I can give you some feedback, like as an executive, like in that
Hmm.
in that dynamic. I work at a company that's fairly eclectic in what we do, but not every company is eclectic. Some companies are like, this is what we do. We do horror film, we do science fiction films, we do comedy films, right? We do big scale action adventure because this is the person who runs our company and we have a deal at this place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more companies like that out there than there were 10 years ago. So there's, in some ways, a lot more opportunity. You will be told this, I'm sure, ad nauseum, but there is some value to it. And that is the idea that, like, if you write one script in 5 different genres, thinking that it will make you utilitarian, it may not be setting you up to break into the business as effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I only do horror films and you wrote one horror film and one comedy and one science fiction film and one drama, and I read that script and say, hey, not for us, what else has so and so written, to a manager who's trying to build a relationship with me, with this writer, they'll say, well, let me circle back and see what they've written. And then they'll call me in 6 months when you've written a new horror film because you're chasing the relationship with me, and I'll have forgotten our meeting, or I'll have forgotten the script because I've read however many in between. And you've lost the opportunity to maintain that relationship. There's kind of like a staying in each other's orbit and presence thing that's important in building a rapport with executives for writers as they're coming up. And so if you have scripts that are in the horror genre or horror adjacent, like, oh, this is a horror script and this is a psychological thriller and this is a, things that are kind of like that, well, they can go, oh, well, I know that one isn't for you, but read this one. Oh, okay, good. I really like the writing. Quickly. I read that one faster than I was able to get to the other one because I'm really into them. And I say, I like their writing. These don't work for us, but I want to take a meeting with them. I want to meet them.
Right. You need more bullets in the chamber. I'm sure there's a less violent analogy there somewhere, but you do, right? Especially when it comes to that stage of.
I sort of think of it like a Venn diagram, right? It's like, you can have like 2 genres with a cross-pollination in between, so long as they're genre-like. It's like if you're doing horrors and you do like horror thriller, then like that kind of makes sense as you're getting started, because they want a manager, as they're looking at you, are going to want to know, okay, I have 15 production companies that do horror films and thrillers that I could introduce you to. So if I have these 2 scripts, I can go out and paper all of those. I can reach out to all of those people and I can try to set some meetings, get you on a water bottle tour, and you guys can meet everybody. But if you have 1 horror script and then 3 comedies, well, I'm focusing on comedy. You know what I mean? Like, it's like which direction you want to go. And then like, once you catch some traction, once you get successful, once you have those relationships, you start generating like, jobs and opportunities with people, then you can diversify, you can branch out.
Yeah.
You're maintaining your own relationships. You kind of,
I think that's a good point too. And you don't hear this that much often either. It's like you start from niche, and then once you get a little trickle of success, potentially anyway, you can kind of branch out to other genres. Or you might be known as the horror person and they expect horror from you. I guess it varies. But there is one question a few minutes ago I saw that I think is worth touching on. It could be a long answer, but we'll figure out how to shorten it. As eyeballs increasingly chase algorithm-driven content, what a start to the sentence. Has the industry's willingness to take risks on challenging, idea-driven material diminished? Can the traditional studio model survive in this content-centric landscape? And what's the best approach today to pitching a bold movie concept or drama to producers or audiences?
Wow,
let's tackle the first part of that first. Has the industry's willingness to take risks on challenging, idea-driven material diminished? This is basically the why aren't studios taking risks and why are they playing it safe question that I would counterpoint, but go ahead. I'm going to hear your opinion on it first. Well, first of all, is that true?
I think the short answer is that the biggest studios are now, vertically integrated companies with corporate shareholders.
Right.
Most of the time, those corporate shareholders are not movie people. They're not people that came through the ranks as junior executives or agents or managers and have seen how movies have gotten made. They're trying to take an MBA approach to mitigating risk and maximizing profit to the movie business, which just kind of economically and holistically can be a profoundly profitable business and is a very profitable business, but it's not like linear steady growth the way that like a lot of these shareholders want and expect. And so one of the ways that they lean on the studios is to say, embrace existing intellectual property. It's risk mitigation. So when everybody says we're looking for IP, we're looking for IP, we're looking for IP, they're absolutely not taking chances on new ideas in the same way, at least at the same volume that they used to. That's what the movie business used to be, was original stories. And now we've really shifted, to the majority of this is how can you capitalize on pre-existing fan base? It really takes, talent that they want to be in business with, or like, or a really great script, that like everybody's really excited by, but that really great script still gets the talent and the directors and the whomever to go take that swing and create that new original IP and story.
Right.
A studio system level to do it internally. I think to the second part of that question, I think we're starting to hit franchise fatigue, and I think the studios are feeling it. And even they're talking about how they can shake that up. The cost of production has got really high. They're looking at genres like romantic comedies, where, like we talked about at the beginning of this call, where they can take a really good, fun script and put fresh talent in and not have to pay, the stars. Like, there was a Nancy Meyer movie. This was in Deadline. I'm not saying, I don't have any personal intel on this. I'm just reading this from the Deadline article, that Netflix decided not to make because it was going to be $120 million.
Right.
That broke.
I had to read that 3 times when I saw it. I wasn't quite sure. Does it take place on the moon?
Million with cast buyouts, and Nancy wanted 30 or 40. And it was like, well, but that's not worth $120 million for a streaming. You know what I mean? Like, the romantic comedies were movies that were everyday circumstances that were heightened and romantic and funny with really great stars you could fall in love with. And so, like, I think that because we're in the process of discovering new talent and we're in this great inflection point from that perspective, there will be an embracement of leaning into new ideas. And so I think across different genres, horror, romantic comedy, I think you're going to see people leaning into new ideas and new IP. You'll see it some in like action adventure and science fiction, but the bar goes higher because the budgets go higher, right? Like, you're going to do $100 million sci-fi movie, they're going to go spend $100 million. They're going to market 50 to 60 or more million against that. The movie has to make $400 million, $360 million domestic, across just to break even. Like, they have to really believe in it. And so it's more than just the story. It becomes this bigger thing. And so I think that, like, there are more accessible genres where you're going to see new ideas breaking through faster.
Yeah, I totally. And I think, look, I want to see more original specs sold and more original movies made. And the next, like, Defending Your Life, if you haven't seen Defending Your Life, I highly recommend it. It's from the 90s. But that sort of, those sorts of movies coming from new voices, new directors, like, put a star name in it to get, to squeeze the marketability out of it. You have to do it. But you have to look at it as a business first. And if I'm a studio, well, of course I'm going to make the Minecraft movie and spend $300 million instead of making, $15 million, my math is right, I think, $15 million smaller indie films and hoping one hits that might make 50 million. You kind of have to, like, you go up to the higher level of the casino at that point, right? So I get why that dynamic is in place. But this is a good segue to another question. And maybe this isn't really technically your wheelhouse, but like the future of like independent film is kind of a question mark, right? How are new directors, new filmmakers, specifically writer directors, I guess, how are they going to kind of pick their way through with that chicken and the egg problem of like, well, how do I find financing when the only people that want to finance a film is if I have, if I've done this, I've done that, I have this star name, I have that star name. What do you think is the outlook there for the next 3 years, 4 years?
I think the independent space is getting hit really hard right now.
Yeah.
And that's just because, the theatricality has eroded in a lot of places. It doesn't mean it's not there, but like the independent space is entirely dependent on, I put this director on, I put this cast on. We go sell foreign theatrical rights across the world. We raise some money. We go make the movie. We cash flow all that with bank loan. That's how like the Hollywood facing independent side of the independent. Right. We have independent movies. I'm producing an independent movie right now. Sometimes just look at it and say, we think it's better if we can raise the equity and make this movie on our own and then go find the distribution that we want later. We can go screen it and try to create like like we can get, somebody who's going to come in and tell us, having seen the movie, how they want to market the movie. We could choose our best marketing partners or distribution partners.
Right.
I think that, look, groups like A24 and Neon and, other theatrical groups, and we can get to the streamers in a minute too, like are really shaking the market up in like an exciting way. They're doing really cool things, but they're doing it at smaller budget levels. Let's talk about Anora. It's a great, like, Sean Baker is not a new filmmaker, but he's been decidedly in the indie scrappy space for years. His whole career.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, shot his first movie on an iPhone. Like, Anora was made for $6 million and it swept at the Academy Awards. And it's made its money back and it's made some profit. And like, it wasn't like a runaway massive, like, change the business hit financially, but that's because it was a story about like a sex worker, right? And there's like some it's domestically and internationally in that audience. There's just some people that from a subject matter may not go see that movie, even if it does clean up at the Academy Awards. But it's not a bad model to think about. I think the reality is like it's from a production standpoint, both from the democratization of production tools to like AI coming online that can augment processes if you're an independent filmmaker. Union filmmaking and things are getting more expensive and crew and labor are getting more expensive and, inflation is happening all the way. But it's never been more accessible for you as a writer filmmaker to go make your stories for less money. And I think that like the reality in the independent space is that like budgets are just getting crunched. And so you just have to be able to do more with less for right now. And I think that will open up again as distribution starts to open up again. We're still impacted by COVID. Like there were just years where, people had to punt on their distribution schedule and people sold things to Netflix and Netflix got a big intake of movies. And so that changed their acquisition. It just like, it had a massive effect and we're still experiencing the ripples of it. We're still recovering.
Well, and just to touch upon that real quick too, it changed the culture in such a way where, movie theaters are kind of clawing their way back and ticket sales and so forth. But it's kind of been ingrained in us now that, and part of the studios are kind of to blame for this by, putting a movie in theaters for 2 weeks and then putting it on streaming. If you know that a movie is going to be on streaming soon, you're just going to wait for it to be on streaming. There's no incentive to go to the movies, right? But I truly think the pandemic just rewired our brains in a way, so that going out to the movies wasn't a thing. It was sitting at home, and that was already happening before COVID, I know, but that definitely, I think, affected things. Let me just touch upon, we got a lot of questions about IP, and I mean, you follow things just like anyone else, I'm sure. And there's like short stories are getting like picked up as essentially like backdoor pitch sales, right? Which I really find interesting. And we don't have to unpack all of that and why that's happening and how exactly that, a small handful of companies and agents are pulling off those deals. But where do you see that going? Like, is IP is always going to be as in demand as it always has been, right? New York Times bestseller or something that's hot that's, about to be published. But I guess my question is, let's just focus on the short story part of thing. Like, is that the new, like, I pitched something in the room and sold it? Or
It's a good question. Look, I don't think it's pervasive across the business. There are a few groups that are
yeah,
really successful. You know, I think that like the cool thing about a short story is if it is the risk to you as a writer is your time. You have
right,
to spend
always.
time, right? And if you're going to go like self-publish a novel, how valuable that becomes as intellectual property is entirely dependent on how far its publication reaches.
Right.
What it's not. They're going to look at that and say like, well, if you self-published it, if it doesn't have a big reach, then they may not really see it as like a valuable piece of IP. Then it's just proof of concept. That's all it really ends up being.
Yeah.
So you put a lot of, if you write a short story that achieves the same thing, creating that proof of concept, then like you've put a lot less time into it. And so I think
Right.
that like short stories as a basis for a theatrical or as a basis for a feature film, whether it's a streaming movie or a theatrical movie, they just need to be expanded, right? It's like, the concept can be kind of laid in there. And I think that's where the the instinct and desire has come from is writers can be more prolific with them. They can write these short stories faster than they could going and writing a novel and then having to entertain the publishing side of things and seeing if they can do various other things. I think that if the ideas are big enough in them, something unique enough in them, then you're seeing those punch through in some pretty big sales.
How accurate are those numbers? You don't have to answer that. I'm just curious. They're inflating them a little bit, right? There's no way anyone's paying high six figures for a short story, or is it?
Look, if I put the right director on it and the right
Right.
like if the right package behind it, and it's so clear that I'm just making this up, but like
Yeah.
if I write something and it's so obvious on the page, this has to be Chris Hemsworth, and I put Chris Hemsworth because I'm friends with him attached to and I'm not, but like if I were
Right.
like attached to everybody's gonna run around and be like he's friends with Chris Hemsworth, but like if I were like and I attach him to this short story, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to sell it for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because
Well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. That had a
I was
separate tension. Okay. So,
see like, oh, this is his voice. He's attached. This is going to be a big deal.
yeah.
It's worth money.
Yeah. Related to that, someone had a question, it was actually on my list too, about how writers, I tell writers this all the time now, like they have to really consider when they're writing the script or even coming up with the idea, who's going to play that role, right? So how much should like potential talent come into play when you're writing something? For example, if you're writing a movie with the two leads are in their mid-teens, that's a hard movie to cast, right? Especially if it's a studio thing, then it's nearly impossible because who's going to carry that movie as far as the name? Um, I guess I just answered my own question. It's important, right? Considering talent and considering the role specifically that you're writing.
Yeah. I think that like remembering that screenwriting is a blueprint for a movie is really, really important when you're doing
Sure.
something. And when you put a blueprint together, sometimes you say like, this is an element that I really love, but you have to ask yourself like, can we afford the materials on the house to do this? Like there's some of
Yeah.
those things. And like some of that just takes time and practice and experience to learn. But to your point, there's not a lot of like bankable stars that are teenagers.
Right.
You're sort of writing for the Stranger Things kids that
Yeah.
are
Which are
now
they're like 30 now. Yeah. Too
aging
late.
out, right? And so it's like just know that you have a narrower target if you're writing that. In terms of like who are going to be the names that motivate people to go make this. Stranger Things is one of those great apocryphal. That's not even apocryphal, I shouldn't say, but like it's one of those like exceptions that proves the rule in Hollywood, where like
Right.
these guys got a chance to go make this, and it just caught like lightning and became a cultural phenomenon.
Right.
Did all kinds, but right now in Hollywood, that just doesn't happen.
We don't have that breeding. Yeah, there's not. It's the same thing with comedy, in my opinion. We don't have that breeding ground. That is like, I mean, we still have SNL, but it's not what it was before, where like Will Ferrell would kind of prove himself there, and Adam Sandler and Jim Carrey on In Living Color, right? It's the same thing on the scripted end, or not the scripted end, but like the sitcoms and the hour-long dramas. It's so hard to like take off and make that young person a star, right? I mean, Stranger Things is of course the exception there, and a few others, I
You're
think. But
seeing a lot more. You're seeing a lot more like new stories and a lot more new talent being broken in television, even like limited series or premium television than you are in movies. And I think that's just because
right,
it's very definitively a writer's medium. You
yeah,
know, movies are a director's medium. They're the one that makes the movie, they're the one that edits the movie, they're the ones that sign off. And TV, the person that has the top authority on a show outside of the network is the showrunner. They're the lead writer on the show that's going to produce the show over the top of it, because they have to make sure that from episode to episode the story has continuity, that the
right.
aesthetic choices are meaning, and they have to be the person that's across it. Whereas a director will come in and do the pilot and maybe one or two other episodes, but they might not do the whole season. Whereas the showrunner does. And so I think people put the studios and the networks put more value on those showrunners because it's such a coveted, difficult job.
Hmm.
And the ones that do really, really well get the chance to throw new ideas and things at the screen more often. So you're just seeing more stuff break in TV right now than you are in movies.
There's more creative latitude in TV too, uh, which is interesting because 20 years ago that wasn't the case really at all, right? Independent film was where you had the creative latitude. You still have the creative latitude there. It's just that it's a little hard on the distribution front to get people to watch indie films, even good indie films, right? Um, your point with the Nora is yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was saying your point with the Nora was a good one. It's Sean Baker. He's been around for 25 years. Won an Oscar, won a Best Actress Oscar, won all these things, and it didn't make $100 million, right? Um, it's again, I think it's just been such a cultural shift on like what we're willing to spend money on and what we're willing to wait for streaming. You know, um,
I was going to say,
yeah,
there's a quick button line on how important is casting. The studios like to think of like stars in movies. So if you have a coming of age story, you could write it with just the two kids and doing whatever, or you could come up with some really meaty roles and storylines for two movie
hmm,
stars to come. And suddenly, your audience viewership goes from this to this.
yeah,
Um, it sort of changes for you. And the last thing I'll say in that, there's a great book. I was really lucky. I got to work with Robert Towne before he passed away. And Robert
hmm,
Towne, among the screenwriting community in the entertainment business, has been considered like one of the greatest screenwriters like of all
sure,
time. Really incredible. And he wrote a book, and it was a publication of two of his scripts, Chinatown and The Last Detail, and he had a forward
hmm,
that he used in this book. And I heard him say this in person, but he also put it in the forward. And you can go find the book if you can find it in print, or maybe it's on Amazon. I'm not sure. I found it at a bookstore.
right.
It says, cast somebody in your head for the characters that are in your story, living or dead. It could be President Roosevelt that you're channeling. It could be your mailman.
Right.
It could be Chris
It's
Hemsworth.
it's a very wide range there. Your friend, Chris Hemsworth. Yeah.
But what he's saying is channel a voice, channel a
Right.
character, channel somebody that's real, and they will come alive on the page, and people will respond to your writing as such.
That's great advice, honestly, and I haven't heard it before. I know you took it from Robert Town, but I'm giving credit to both of you on that one because I actually hadn't heard that.
Everything.
Right. Because at least it gives you a foundation for a visual and not necessarily lets you emulate that voice, but at least embodies a certain character and then you kind of make it your own. On that note, actually, I had another question. I think someone else asked it, or at least it was an adjacent question about what I guess demographic, but really age range for what is that role in your script? Like, what's the age range? It shouldn't be under 25, let's say, or it should be something for an actress in their 40s or 50s. Like, you want to hit the range where you have the more options for star talent to get attached, right?
Yeah, I mean, ideally. Look,
Yeah,
if you're writing a movie right now, TV has its own separate challenges. But like if you're writing a movie right now, the way that we look at the movie business, since it's kind of been fractured a little bit, like Netflix is its own ecosystem, Amazon is its own ecosystem, Apple has ways that they make decisions that are different than the way that the other two
totally.
streamers do. Warner Brothers is upside down. The rest of the studios are all doing different things, and everybody has. It used to be that if I had a movie and I put this package together, I could get all five major studios theatrically to say, "Yeah, that's a movie and that's a good package, and we want to make it." And
Mhm.
we pick which one was best. Now you have algorithms telling you what to do. You have maybe like an actress that performs really well on Netflix that doesn't really translate a whole lot theatrically
Right,
to like at least like Warner Brothers or Universal, maybe creatively, but financially they don't have the same kind of visibility or celebrity or reach yet. But they're very meaningful on Netflix. They were in the top show or whatever, right? And
right,
so like, we kind of have to look at things and say, okay, the things that we're going to take on, we want to have the most versatility for in a way. And I think it's a good way to think about writing too, right? So if
yeah,
you're going to make that choice, there are more actresses between 25 and 40 than there are between 20 and 25.
right,
Um, your story, if the story that you want to write is a lead who's 22, you know, maybe there's a couple of roles that could be really important to the movie that are in their 30s or 40s. You could go find that like could be impactful and could be really well written, and you could go cast people around them so that you just have
right.
some more marketability with some more established actors and stars. And then the hope is that you'll be able to go find somebody who's up and coming or maybe has had that big show on Netflix that you can put in this because those other two actors are doing the lifting of carrying the marketing needs and the value and the things that you need.
And to go full circle too, we started the conversation talking about dramas and why dramas are especially tough right now. Last year, there was that script After the Hunt, right? The writer's name suddenly escapes me, but Julia Roberts is attached. It's getting made. Super heavy subject matter about on-campus assault, right? But it was a really juicy, dramatic role for an actress. In her 50s, 60s. And it was super topical and relevant and it felt, in the here and now. And you can pull that off. I think if you write, it goes back to what you were saying before in the middle of the conversation about how it has to be character centric and character forward. Um, so it used to be, maybe I'm misremembering, but like 15 years ago, it was like all about the concept. Like 90% of it was just write a really cool idea. And you still need a really cool idea, but there's a lot more nuance now, and there's a lot more variation on the types of scripts I see managers and producers getting excited about and passing around, you know. Um, so
By good
yeah.
material. Right?
So I'm sorry, you
And
cut out there. There you go.
I was saying people get excited by great material. If it's a
Right.
great read, great script, people get excited by it, kind of regardless of genre. Um, I
Yeah.
think the onus on like really hitting it out of the park is higher with the drama than it is with the other genres
Sure.
right now. And look, that's what everybody aims to do from the beginning, right? It's what we aim to do as producers when we make movies too, right? We're all, trying to make the best movie we can.
Yeah.
The problem is if you go talk to like financiers and agencies and things about dramas today, they'll say like, well, if you can make it for $3 million, then you should do that. And it's like, well,
Right.
we're accustomed to making $40 million dramas. I'm not sure we're going to
Right.
make $3 million. And
And
I
how to do that with star names and balancing all that is next to impossible, I would think.
there's just fewer people that can pull the various resources together to do it on a consistent
Right.
basis. It's not that dramas don't get made. It's not that you shouldn't write a drama. You should just know going in that like the market is tougher for them. And that by and large, the balance has shifted from the business being mostly dramas. And to your point, Matt, you said earlier, dramas have a wide range to them, right? Like Amadeus is a drama, and it's funny, and it's
Right.
like it's got breadth and pathos, and and like
Right.
it doesn't all have to just be like, let's talk about Kevin, right? Like it, there's like
No, it doesn't have to be this heavy. Like Nicolas Cage and Pig, right? Great movie. It's not, there's no cars getting blown up or anything. Dream Scenario, also a Nicolas Cage movie. Just a super fun, right? Basis for
yeah,
an idea.
so those are great examples. There's something fresh and unique about the idea too. I
Right.
think like if you can find your way into a take on a story that has something different about it,
Yeah.
like if just a straight biopic, it's harder to get done. I've read a lot of biopics that didn't get made.
Yeah. It has to be a
I
really interesting figure that only you could write, I think, or you have
Yeah,
the rights
and,
to some
and
big book or something.
and look, it's not to say that you shouldn't go make a biopic either. We have one we're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's taken a long time to get there, but we're working aggressively at it. But yeah, I think that like Pig is a different take on a dramatic story,
Hmm.
and Sarnowski, and he's a filmmaker too. But like that movie sort of established him as a filmmaker. So I think that don't be afraid of leaning into something that feels a little different, because I think that'll also help you stand out in a way if you're going to be.
That that is the best possible soundbite to end on, honestly. And for the record, now that I think about it, the one thing that Stranger Things did that was brilliant was the Winona Ryder character, and also casting Winona Ryder, because it was always going to be this nostalgic series, and I think it was genius for them to cast somebody that we kind of haven't heard about in a while, to lure that older that Gen X millennial crowd in. Anyway, so there, even with Stranger Things, which feels like an anomaly, there was still a role that we could kind of like use as a touchstone to cast, right?
Yeah.
So all good stuff to keep in mind. I'll loop back in Jeannie. I'm sure Jeannie has been waiting to ask one of her own questions to end with, or maybe she has. I don't know. We'll see. The
No,
suspense is killing me.
there's no, I like to sit back and let the audience get their questions in. It's more important to me for that. Um, but I would like to I guess I do have a question. I would like to ask you, like, if you had like one piece of advice for people who are just frustrated, maybe been writing for a while, maybe been entering contests and trying to figure out like how do I get my foot in the door? Like what like basic one piece of meaty advice you could give them that might, I don't know,
Hmm.
or at least help them stay in the game.
Well, it might not be like the one piece thing. It's kind of like a maybe a slightly longer answer, but I think like the most important thing is like this is not a transactional business. It's not like I write this and I get this thing sold and it works. It's a long game business. Like you've got to be like in it to build relationships and try to get there. And so maybe shifting your expectations is also like part and parcel to it, and just
Hmm.
knowing like it could take time. It
Mhm.
could be this festival that helps break you through, or this assistant to this manager who's hip pocketing people and is building a roster, reads your script and likes you, and that becomes your conduit and your way in. Some of it's luck, some of it's timing, some of it's like coming out and trying to meet people where you can. You know, there is a reality to the movie business that like most people catch a lucky break at some point in time.
Mhm.
And I think having some temerity and some belief in yourself that you can get there. And then I'd say the last thing is like writers are fortunate. They rely on nobody else to write. They can just
Hmm.
go. My job requires me to talk to 50 people a day. Um, to move the conversation uphill. And sometimes they don't call me back right away. Um, and it takes weeks to move something uphill. Whereas writers can just write. And so I think that like my big advice is like Don't sit around waiting for it. The attrition of trying to break through is just a reality, but keep writing. No matter what you're doing, don't write like 2 or 3 scripts and say that's done. You should just always be writing.
That's fantastic advice. If you could see in the chat, there's tons of people just saying, this is so great. This was so wonderful. We really appreciate you taking the time.
I did see one depressing comment, but I mean, we're not trying to depress you. These are the realities of, breaking into the film industry right now. But I do, from my perspective anyway, as far as like the requests that we're getting and the movement I see on some of the script pipeline finalists and winners, the past year or two, actually, it's all kind of headed in the right direction. Everything's kind of on the cusp and just waiting for the dam to break, I think. So things are headed in the right direction post WGA strike, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think things are improving. Things have gotten more expensive. The studios, everybody's just a little upside down from the streaming wars and COVID. A lot of things hitting at once. But it'll iron out. It's a pendulum and it's headed back. And 2-3 years ago, people were talking about comedy like, sure, if you can go do TV, great. But now people are trying to figure it out again. Once one breaks through, suddenly there'll be new stars again. And that's just going to be the way that it works. Somebody's going to figure it out. So why not be you?
Yeah.
Why not you? That is like perfect. Don't say anything else, Matt. That was perfect.
I really want to touch upon some of the negatives of Hollywood. No, we'll end on that. No, that's great. Thank you, Michael, for taking the time again.
And before you guys go, before all the audience goes, I just want to let you know we have a couple publishing symposiums coming up next, but the ones that relate to screenwriting, we have a wonderful one coming up on July 9th with Lee Jessup, Creative Strategies for the Changing Screenwriting Landscape. And then we also, on August 6th, have another logline workshop that Meredith Allen does. It's a very popular event. We don't sell that one on demand because she actually workshops your logline with you live, and we want to keep your ideas private. But those are the next 2 screenwriting ones we have coming up, one in July, one in August, and then some other publishing ones. So if you guys want to write novels, you can try that too.
Big recommend for the logline one, and that's usually one where we bundle a free script pipeline entry just so we can encourage people to take it, because most of you, I'm sure you're wonderful writers. You're not writing the best log lines, and everyone needs a little bit of help there, I think. So that's
they're
one
hard.
worth. They're not easy. I think they're easy, but whatever. Because I've seen Meredith's logline workshops so many times.
You've taken it.
Yeah. So that's my only plug, logline workshop.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you all being here tonight, and especially Michael. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Symposium is brought to you by Pipeline Artists, a division of Pipeline Media Group. To learn more about upcoming live symposiums, visit symposium.pipelineartists.com and follow us on Twitter @PipelineArtists.